Okay, dear colleagues, as the work package 2 leader, I am very happy to see the great progress that we have seen on the courses presented so far. At the same time, the next one I'm presenting, we have some progress, but really I'm impressed of the previous ones. We are not that far, but fortunately we still have time to move on. So yes, our topic was research ethics, intellectual property rights, and personal data protection. And we have prepared this as a Finnish-Armenian collaboration together with colleagues from Armenian State Pedagogical University, Lucin and Samuel, and they have actually done a main part of this work. So far, we have from Helsinki, we have provided some materials. We have had some meetings together, and we will be continuing the work. So the course is targeted to PhD students as a compulsory part of a doctoral program, and the aim being the students to understand the core principles of research ethics and integrity. And we will go through these on the course quite detailed. And learning outcomes listed here, we identified 6 so far. Being able to describe and apply theories and methods in ethics and research ethics, especially to acquire an overview of important issues in research ethics, like responsibility for research, ethical vetting, and scientific misconduct. Importantly, acquiring skills of presenting arguments and results of ethical inquiries, and then very importantly, identify rights and responsibilities as a researcher. This being having societal impact as well as the next one, understanding how ethical decisions and choices influence the society and the research community, and finally to fulfill legal requirements related to intellectual property rights and personal data protection. The content, briefly here, I will go these through a little bit more detailed. After introduction, there will be 11 ethical principles that we have identified, and then more specifically about authorship, intellectual property and plagiarism, collaboration in research, and publication ethics. So in the introduction, the idea is to cover definitions of research ethics and ethics generally, rationales and goals for teaching research ethics, and the fundamental importance of evaluating outcomes for research ethics education. And so, as I mentioned, 11 ethical principles that I will next mention, starting with honesty in all scientific communication, objectivity, trying to avoid bias in experimental design, data analysis, interpretation of data, peer review, personal decisions, grant writing, expert testimony, and other aspects of research. Integrity, keeping promises and agreements, being sincere. Carefulness, avoiding errors arising from being careless and or neglecting. Carefully and critically examining own work and the work of the peers, and keeping good records of research activities. Confidentiality, protecting confidential communications. Responsibility in publication, so publishing in order to advance research and scholarship, not just own career. And responsible mentoring, helping the community, educate, mentor, advise students, promote everybody's welfare. Non-discrimination, quite importantly. Competence, the professional competence, maintaining and improving own and also providing support for peers, competence, and promoting competence in science as a whole. Legality, knowing, first of all, the laws and policies, and of course obeying them. And human subject protection, when there is the research going on human subjects, minimize harms and risks and maximize benefits. Those were these 11 ethical principles that we identified, and then this for other topics, starting with authorship. So some training on the authorship of scientific manuscripts, papers, reports, principles of the authorship, so that each author has made a significant scientific contribution to the study. Because this authorship is very important factor in the academia. Then second, the intellectual property, honoring patents, copyrights, other forms of intellectual property, not using unpublished data without permission or methods or results, and proper acknowledging and never plagiarizing. And about third, about collaboration, being open, sharing data, results, ideas, tools, and resources, at the same time being open to criticism towards own study, and also being open to new ideas. That's what advances science. And then publication ethics, starting from appropriate study design to study execution, data collection, data analysis, and finally publication. And knowing and following the ethical code of conduct in all of these steps is important. Okay, so that was the content briefly. So we haven't yet talked about how to structurize this course in detail, in which kind of forms of teaching, also assessment. We have collected some materials, but we should prepare a more comprehensive list of those. But this is what we will be continuing with. Basically, the deadline coming from Inga's words yesterday. So now here, at least tentatively being end of next month. Thank you for your attention. That's all from me.
Thank you, Katja. And we have time for questions. Please, if you have questions. Maybe persons who were involved also. Yeah, Yelena, please.
No, I don't have a question.
Oh, you're active on my screen. Okay. When I have a question to Katja, could you please? So when you mentioned it about the ethics, research ethics, is it already introduced at the bachelor level? Some kind of a basic principles, part of the program.
I think this is something that varies between universities, and okay, in this context we haven't talked about it with the Armenian colleagues. If I think about our study programs, it is somehow touched, but it's not. I mean, I think it is when the bachelor students are taught to use this tools for searching for material and using the publications and so on. That is some touch there. This at least the plagiarism and this kind of issues, but not really as a dedicated course. So it's part of some general studies for all. Of course, it's a the emphasis is quite different if we compare, for example, bachelor or even master and doctoral studies, because it's foremost it's a doctoral studies when you really start to design your research and publish, and there you have quite specific ethical principles that you should follow, which you don't need to be so well aware of in the bachelor stage or even the master stage.
Yes, when I have a question also about the research, well, for your presentation about the criticism. So if you are talking about from colleagues or self-criticism approach, how you can comment on that? Do you provide some kind of a input for students as well?
I'm not sure I exactly understand. I mean, I think it was mentioned here that this kind of being open to criticism from colleagues. Yes, self-criticism is because I think it arises from knowledge that you know what you're doing and you know the principles, also the ethical principles. So. Yeah, I would say this openness here is quite important. Also in the self-criticism that you should, I mean, you should share with colleagues your kind of self-criticism as well, because it's what I have seen. It varies quite a lot. So in order to kind of find like the right level of self-criticism, it is quite important to share your critical ideas with your colleagues as well. So it's that also somehow culminates to openness, I would say.
Thank you, Katja. And then we have a comment also from Yelena. The earlier the ethical principles are introduced would be the better option, and this is the most important foundation for any kind of research.
Yes, of course, and this should definitely be in the beginning of doctoral studies. I mean, for example, the ethics of research design and publishing, and the criticism and so on, but not earlier. I would say not earlier. The earlier the better, in that sense that it's probably not so fruitful to present this research design and publication ethics ideas for first-year bachelor students, because it's not yet relevant for them. But maybe this is not what Jelena meant. For sure, in the very beginning of doctoral studies, this should be quite carefully taught to all the students. Yes.
Thank you, Katja. I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you still have questions, please write them